So, let's talk about time travel. Hello, welcome to Weary Lore. Recently, there's been a lot of excitement about time travel, especially on TikTok. A new story came out about a man who believes that there's either a time travel portal in his shed at his Airbnb or a time traveler uses his shed to time travel. I'm not going to go into detail on these videos or try to analyze them myself. I do have an opinion, which I will state later in the video, but I don't feel that I need to rehash the entire story. If you need a breakdown of this story because you either don't know about it or don't know about all the details surrounding it, I have linked two YouTube videos in the description. One is from the side of a YouTuber who leans more towards being a believer, and the other is from the side of a YouTuber who is a skeptic. They are both good watches and amazing channels. Now, on to the purpose of this video. There are claims made that the above-mentioned story could not be made up. There's no way that it's not real because no one could create it. So I want to see what has been made up about time travel. Welcome to a brief history of time travel and the stories surrounding it. Let's jump in. First, let's define time travel. I'm going to read you Wikipedia's definition of time travel. It is as follows. Time travel is the hypothetical activity of traveling into the past or future. Time travel is a widely recognized concept in philosophy and fiction, particularly science fiction. In fiction, time travel is typically achieved through the use of a hypothetical device known as a time machine. The idea of a time machine was popularized by H.G. Wells' 1895 novel, The Time Machine. As Wikipedia states, time travel was popularized by H.G. Wells' novel, The Time Machine. This novella is about a Victorian scientist known as a time traveler who traveled approximately 800,806 years into the future. In order to do this, he used a vehicle known as a time machine. What I find interesting about this is that at the time of its writing, H.G. Wells, its author, didn't see the novella as a timeless work of literature that would inspire droves of authors. He called it a very undergraduate performance to its now mature writer. He admitted that even an unpolished author could make up an amazing story about time travel. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's travel back in time a bit. Even though the time machine popularized the concept of time travel, it was far from the first mention of time travel in history. The oldest, or one of the oldest mentions of time travel, is in a story that is present in both the Quran and Christianity. This story is known as Companions of the Cave in the Quran and the Sleepers of Ephesus in Christianity. In this story, a group of young men fled from religious persecution and hid in a cave. They went to sleep there. This story happened in AD 250. Once they awoke, they exited the cave to find that centuries had passed, 300 years, yet they hadn't aged. They had time traveled. There are a good amount of time travel stories that are formulated like this. A person is running or hiding from something and goes to sleep only to wake up some number of years later, having not aged, but the world around them had. This is time travel without a vehicle, but it still fits the definition. Another mention of time travel is in the Mahabharata. This is an ancient Sanskrit epic which is revered in Hinduism. It was compiled in the 4th century CE. In this epic, there is a story of a king who is looking for a suitable husband for his daughter. He visits the god of creation to ask for advice. Once there, they must wait for the god to listen to a 20-minute song. It turns out that time in the god's realm passes differently than on Earth. So, when they returned to Earth, they had traveled forward in time. There is also a number of time travel stories that follow this formulation. Two that I found come from Japanese and Irish folklore. There is a fairy tale in Japanese folklore about a fisherman named Urashima Taro. He rescues a turtle, and soon after that is approached by a giant turtle. This turtle takes him to an underwater palace. There, he meets the turtle who he rescued. This turtle is a princess. He spends several days with her and decides to go home. When he gets home, he finds that at least 100 years have passed in the few days he was at the palace. In the Irish legend, a human hero, Ocean, falls in love with a woman of the other world, Neve. They travel to the other world, spend 3 years together, and then Ocean becomes homesick. Neve warns him not to go back, but he does anyway, only to be shocked that 300 years have passed. Both of these stories come with a warning, a lesson. Urashima is given a jeweled box that he is told to never open. After discovering time had passed, he opens it. It held his years. He instantly ages 100 years into an old man. Ocean is sent back home on the back of a very special horse and told never to let his feet touch the ground. On his way back to the other world, he helps to move a boulder and falls off the horse. When he does, his years catch up with him and he perishes. I know I'm not talking about the dangers of time travel specifically, but even these stories showed it to not be a good idea. Time travel in more modern literature is very widespread. Before moving on to modern day literature, let's look at a couple honorable mentions that were written before the time machine. One of these is a French book written in 1771 whose name was rendered into English as Memoirs of the Year 2500. This book was written by Louis Sebastian Mercier. Wikipedia describes this novel as one of the most popular and controversial novels of the 18th century, one of the earliest works of science fiction, and the first work of utopian fiction set in the future rather than at a distant place in the present. This novel follows the formula of the main character falling asleep and waking up in the distant future, finding the world a completely new and changed place. Another very well-known story that features time travel is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, written in 1843. This story features time travel in both directions, which other stories had not up until that time. In this story, the main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, is taken by the ghost of Christmas past and Christmas future to their time periods to see the scenes there. Seeing what has been and what could be affects Ebenezer and makes him a better man in the process. This story has become a very popular Christmas tale, with few thinking about the time travel implications in it. Okay, let's move past the time machine. According to a list compiled by Goodreads, 3 novels outpace The Time Machine as the most popular time travel books written. Yes, this might be a biased source, but my research of these novels showed that they are very popular. The first one of these is Outlander, a novel by Diana Gabaldon, written in 1991. In this novel, the main character, a nurse named Claire, is out plant gathering when she hears a buzzing noise. Upon touching the stones where the buzzing noise was coming from, she passes out. When she wakes up, she finds that she has somehow traveled to the past. This book has sold over 25 million copies. It also has a television series of the same name based around it. The second novel is written by the master of horror himself, Stephen King. This novel is titled 11/22/63 and was published in 2011. In this novel, the main character, Jake, is led to a pantry in the back of a diner where there is a time slip. This time slip leads back to 1958. After some hijinks in time that cause damage to the future, Jake decides to try to prevent the very public assassination of JFK. This goes about as well as you would expect. This isn't Stephen King's only foray into a type of time travel either. In 2022, he also wrote a book called Fairy Tale. In this book, there was a magical portal in a shed that led to a sundial that worked like a fountain of youth. A time travel portal in a shed. More on that later. The number one book on this list is The Time Traveler's Wife by Audrey Niffenegger, published in 2003. This novel is a different take on time travel. Instead of using a machine, falling asleep, or even finding a portal, one of the main characters in this novel has a genetic condition that causes him to time travel unpredictably. This causes him a lot of discomfort, as you would expect. Reading the plot summary of this novel reminded me a lot of SCP-507, The Reluctant Dimension Hopper. It's a fresh take on time travel, and interesting enough that I'm going to invest in the novel. Looking at all these novels, it's very clear that anything and everything can be made up about time travel. Even in my years as a creative writer, I never would have thought of some of these scenarios. I have written about time travel. In my time travel short story, the character traveled through time by walking through a magical tree arch. It's amazing what an imaginative mind can come up with. But it doesn't stop there. Let's take a look at other media, like television. I already mentioned that one of the above books had a television series created around it. More than one of them did, actually. But I want to talk about other series, not just series created from novels, as entertaining as those are. I would be absolutely bereft if I did not mention the man of the hour, the Time Lord himself, Doctor Who. Doctor Who is a British television series that originally started airing in 1963. It aired until 1989 and then took a break until 2005 when it was rebooted. It has been running since then. Doctor Who is a massively popular series, both on the British side and on the American side. The fandom for this show has spanned generations. In this show, the main character, Doctor Who, is a Time Lord, the supposed last of the species. The Doctor is a shapeshifter, almost like a phoenix. When he comes to the end of his current reincarnation, he shapeshifts into a new Doctor, and the adventure continues. Now, the Doctor is not male or female, but for simplicity's sake, I am calling the Doctor him, because for the majority of the series, the Doctor has been a male. Doctor Who travels through time and space in a time machine / spaceship called the TARDIS. It is shown as a blue police box. It is supposed to be able to be camouflaged, but it's broken. He is able to control when and where he goes, for the most part. It's a fascinating series about time travel and destiny and the universe as a whole. The ingenuity and imagination in this series is seriously impressive and really shows just how time travel narrative can be used to create an amazing story. The show is popular enough to have generated spin-offs. They are very impressive in their own right, but I won't be talking about them here. Another television series revolving around time travel is called Timeless. In this series, a group of terrorists steal an experimental time machine. They do this in order to rewrite history. Another group goes after them to try to stop them, only to find that they all have a connection to this plan. I haven't seen this series, so I don't have as much insight into it as I did Doctor Who, but it still remains that it is an imaginative series that uses time travel as the crux of its plot. Time travel doesn't only show up in television shows. There have also been a number of movies about the phenomenon. One of the more well-known and popular movies about it is called The Butterfly Effect. Before going into the movie, let's talk about what the butterfly effect is. The butterfly effect is a real chaos theory. In very simple terms, it is a theory where one very small change can result in a very large occurrence later. A metaphor that has been used to explain this theory is that a butterfly flapping its wings can cause a tornado weeks down the line. The butterfly effect is often brought up in time travel to say that any tiny change to the past could do irreparable damage to the future. But back to the movie. The Butterfly Effect is a movie about a man who suffers from blackout. In this movie, the main character, Evan, suffers from blackouts. He discovers that during these blackouts, he is able to travel back in time to inhabit his younger body. When he does that, he tries to change things in the past to make things better in the future. Obviously, who wouldn't? But of course, that's not how it goes. This is a cautionary tale, as many time travel stories are. I have no doubt that we would mess things up if we could travel back in time. According to some people, we already have. There are numerous other movies revolving around time travel, but they mostly all have the same plot. Person travels back in time, tries to fix the future ends up broken. So let's move on. All of this doesn't stop people from claiming to be time travelers or claiming to have met time travelers. Now, we've all heard about Charlie Chaplin's Time Traveler. In a 1928 Charlie Chaplin film, a woman walks by in the background and it looks like she's talking on a cell phone. This has been largely debunked, however. Historians have stated that the device held up to her ear is something called an ear trumpet, a very early version of a hearing aid. Another popular time traveler that I've seen everywhere is the modern-day hipster at the bridge opening. This photograph is from a bridge opening in 1941. In the middle of the crowd, there's someone who looks like a modern-day hipster. However, I have seen this image extensively examined, and each piece of clothing the man is wearing, as well as the camera he is holding, were all available in 1941. Remember, everything old is new again. I mean, being a hipster is not new. That's kind of the definition. Before I became better at researching, the time traveler story that nearly made me reconsider my stance on the subject was the story of Rudolph Fentz. When I was presented with this story, it was presented to me as completely factual as true. The story stated that a man wearing 19th century clothing suddenly appeared in the middle of the road in New York City and was hit by a car. Upon investigation and autopsy, it was found that this man was named Rudolph Fentz, and he had gone missing without a trace in 1876. Everything he had on him suggested that he had somehow traveled through time from 1876 to 1951, with no time actually passing. Traveling through time just to be killed upon arrival? That would suck. Sadly, this story is just that, a story. Well, I guess it's not sad. At least the person didn't die. It originated in the science fiction book A Voice from the Gallery, which was written in 1953 by Ralph Holland. Well, that's not quite right, because Ralph Holland actually copied the tale from the 1951 short story I'm Scared by Jack Finney. So far, all the time travelers have been discredited. The internet isn't a safe space from supposed time travelers either. There have been time travelers on the internet as far back as 2000, 24 years ago. One of the most well-known time travelers that originated on the internet is known as John Titor, a future American military personnel. He was a purported time traveler from 2036 who made a litany of predictions of events that were going to happen in our future. These events included a civil war that was supposed to happen in 2008, and a short nuclear World War III that was supposed to happen in 2015. Obviously, these things never happened. But John held the many worlds interpretation as correct. Because of this, it was possible that events from his timeline may differ from our own timeline. This made it difficult to debunk him, because if something didn't happen, he fell back on the many worlds interpretation, saying that his time travel had created a new time stream where the event didn't happen. It made his predictions non-falsifiable. But being non-falsifiable does not equal being true. There has been a good amount of investigation into this character, and it is highly suspected that he was created by a pair of brothers, Larry and John Haber. It's not been proven, but it is suspected. The last supposed time traveler I'm going to talk about here is Andrew Carlson. I may be aging myself here, but I remember this news when it was breaking news. I was a teenager, and my interest in the internet was still in its infancy. I definitely didn't know how to do research. I didn't know how to go online and debunk fake news. So when I heard the story of a man disappearing from police custody, just poof, gone, after claiming to be a time traveler, it was mind-blowing. In short, Andrew Carlson was arrested because of being suspected of insider trading. Within 2 weeks, he had turned $800 into $350 million. Something we would all like to do. Which is absolutely impossible. When he was arrested, he claimed to be a time traveler, and that's how he knew the information that he knew. Then, he disappeared without a trace, and it was later found that there were no records of him ever existing. Shockingly, that's because he never did. The original story came from the Weekly World News, and we all know how reputable the Weekly World News is. It's a notorious tabloid. It was made up. It's a good story, but it was fake. And now we have a time traveler in a shed in the backyard of an Airbnb. After going through this brief history of time travel with me, think critically about this. It can't be made up. Look at everything that has been made up about time travel. Also, the original poster himself brought up the Easter egg of, hey, doesn't this guy look like Stephen King? Stephen King is the author of a book where there's a portal to a type of time machine in a shed. It's a good story, but just like everything else I discussed here, that's just what it is. It's a story. Enjoy it for what it is. Play along if that's what entertains you. I won't pretend to be a scientist or a philosopher. I don't know if time travel is possible. I don't have the skill set to try to prove this theory or not. I am simply a person trying to make sense of this world. Do I believe that a type of time travel may be possible in the future? Yes, actually. Do I believe that we should do it? No! I feel like it's along the same lines of trying to clone extinct dinosaurs. We really shouldn't be trying to create our own monsters. But what do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Let me know. I can't wait to see what you have to say. I hope you enjoyed this brief history of time travel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.